Most people do not fail at compounding because they are stupid. They fail because compounding insults them before it rewards them. It asks you to act like an owner while your account still looks like a joke. It asks you to plant money when the harvest is invisible. It asks you to believe in a future that has not yet sent back any proof. That is why I want you to stop thinking about compounding as a chart. A chart is too clean, too polite, too academic. Compounding is a fuse. When you light a fuse, nothing impressive happens at first. There is a little spark, a little hiss, a little line of fire crawling through dead time. If you are impatient, you think it is broken. If you are emotional, you step on it. If you are socially weak, you let somebody laughing next to you convince you to snuff it out. Then years later, you look at somebody with real freedom and call it luck. When the truth is much uglier than that, they did not get lucky. They protected the fuse longer than you did. I have watched ordinary people ruin their financial life with one bad habit that sounds harmless. They keep demanding emotional proof from a mathematical process that only pays out visible proof at the end. That is the trap. You begin, the number is small, the account barely moves, inflation is loud, rent is loud, social media is loud, your own boredom is loud, and the fuse, the one thing that matters, burns so quietly you mistake silence for failure. I want to make this painfully clear. The first stage of compounding is not about money. It is about humiliation. It is about whether you can tolerate looking unimpressive while the system is secretly becoming real. That is why the poor stay poor longer than they need to. Not because they are incapable of sacrifice, not because they never hear good advice. They stay poor because the early years of ownership do not flatter the ego. Salary flatters the ego because it arrives on schedule. Consumption flatters the ego because it is visible. Compounding humiliates the ego because for a long time it asked for discipline while offering almost no applause. If you do not understand that, you will build your whole life around activities that feel rewarding early and become expensive later. You will choose consumption over ownership. You will choose excitement over accumulation. You will choose visible comfort over invisible control. And one day you will discover that your older self is still working, not because life was unfair, but because you kept stomping out the fuse before it reached the charge. Let me show you what that looks like in ordinary life. Imagine a young man working in a noisy customer support center. He is not a Wall Street wizard. He is not building a startup. He is not sitting on family money. He earns about $43,400 a year before tax. After deductions, roughly $2,619 lands each month. Now watch the machine around him. Rent takes about $1,153. Groceries and transport chew through another 800 and something. The rest gets pecked to death by life. A little here, a little there, a phone bill, a meal out, a ride, a replacement purchase, a bad week disguised as convenience. Most months he ends up with maybe $50 or $60 left in checking. That is the range where most people tell themselves a fatal lie. They say, I will start when I can do something meaningful. That sentence has buried more wealth than any bear market. Meaningful is not a number. Meaningful is a system that survives. This young man, call him Harry, does something that looks laughable to anybody infected with social comparison. He opens a plain investing account. No heroic stock picking, no fantasy about becoming a genius trader, just a simple broad index fund. Then he sets an automatic purchase for $37 a month. 37 not because 37 is magical, because it is the number he can see leave his account without panic flooding his chest. That matters more than people think. A system you can survive beats a system you admire. I would rather see you invest an amount so small your friends mock it than hear you make one more grand speech about what you plan to do after the next raise, after the next bonus, after life feels easier, after conditions become perfect. Conditions do not become perfect. They become expensive. That is what happens. So the first deposit goes through, then the second, then the third, and emotionally nothing good happens. This is where ordinary people begin misreading the process. Month 1, the account moves by $1 here, down 3 there, up 2 again. It feels ridiculous. The money could have bought takeout, it could have softened the week, it could have produced immediate pleasure. Instead, it sits there behaving like a weak little number. By month 3, he has just over $100 invested. The balance wobbles. It does not look like power. It looks like delay. This is the boredom stage of the fuse. The fuse is burning. You just hate the speed. That hatred is expensive. People think the danger in investing is panic during crashes. That is only one danger. The more common danger is disgust during the early crawl. You become offended by how little visible reward the process gives you. You want the account to perform emotionally before it can perform mathematically. That is childish. The market owes you nothing for being new. Your first deposits are not there to impress you. They are there to change who gets paid first in your life. That is the real shift. The moment money begins leaving your hands for ownership before it is available for convenience, your identity starts to move. The dollars are small. The identity is not. This is where the poor and the future rich part ways, even when they still live in the same apartment block, drive similar cars, and complain about the same inflation. One person treats every leftover dollar as relief. The other person starts treating a slice of income as untouchable seed. That is not a budgeting trick. That is a sovereignty decision. When I say pay yourself first, I do not mean indulge yourself first. I mean pay your future ownership first, pay your future refusal power first, pay the part of you that would like one day to stop selling every waking hour at retail prices. Harry makes one unusually intelligent choice for somebody with very little room. He decides that for the first year, the account is not allowed to become a mood. It is just a bill it leaves. He does not debate it. He does not ask each month whether he still feels motivated. He removes the performance from the habit. That is wisdom. Willpower is overrated. A clean automatic rule is better than an emotional promise. Around month 6, the account crosses roughly $250. No fireworks, no parade. But something subtle changes for the first time in his adult life. He can look at a line of net worth that slopes in the right direction because of a decision, not because of an accident. Then reality punches him. A car repair shows up roughly $489. This is where most people expose what they really believe. If your investment account is just extra cash wearing a respectable label, the first unexpected bill kills it. That is why so many people never get past the tiny stage. They did not build an ownership system, they built a temporary experiment. Harry does something far more important than earning a high return. He protects the fuse, he pulls extra shifts, he sells an old gaming console, he patches the problem without draining the account. Now understand what happened. The amount did not save him, the meaning saved him. He stopped seeing the account as available money and started seeing it as planted capital. This is the identity stage of the fuse. You are no longer just making deposits. You are redrawing the border between present appetite and future power. Most people never do this cleanly. They keep one foot in each world. They say they want wealth. But every time pressure arrives, ownership becomes negotiable. That is why they are always restarting, always beginning again. Always waiting for the magical future version of themselves who will somehow become disciplined without first building disciplined systems. By the end of year 1, Harry has deposited about $444 of his own cash. The account might show something like $469 depending on the market. Up around $25. That number is almost insulting. Good, it is supposed to be. The fuse is testing whether you are a child or an allocator. A child looks at $25 and says, all that for this. An allocator looks at $25 and says, my behavior changed first. The visible reward is late by design. That is how grown capital is built. If you are weak in the beginning, the end will never meet you. In year 2, Harry does not suddenly become a machine. He does something more realistic and more effective. When a little overtime shows up or a small raise, he nudges the monthly amount up by $5 or $7. That is all. This matters enormously because compounding is not only about return, it is about preserving the fuse while lengthening it and feeding it. The great mistake people make is thinking only in giant gestures. Double the contribution, make a dramatic move, change everything Monday morning. That kind of vanity planning collapses on contact with real life. Small increases that survive are superior to heroic plans that die. So 37 becomes 44, then 50, then 53. By month 24, Harry has put in a little over $1,100. The account might show roughly $1,229. The gain is still small by the standards of social media, but the psychological structure has changed again. He is beginning to feel that the money has a pulse separate from his labor. This is the separation stage of the fuse. At first, every dollar in the account feels like trapped effort. Later, some of it starts to feel like a second worker in the household. That sensation is vital. If you have never felt your money show up for you, you are much more likely to abuse it. You treat all cash as equally disposable because you have not yet experienced capital as a living ally. This is why simple books have changed more lives than sophisticated models. One generation hears an old rule like pay yourself first. Another hears a modern version like buy the whole market and stay there. The language changes. The mechanism does not send a slice of income to the future, before the world gets its teeth into it. Then protect that slice so consistently that your identity adjusts around it. That is the whole beginning. Not brilliance, not prediction, not stock picking survival. Survival long enough for the boring years to become the base of the powerful years. Now we come to the part most people still underestimate. The early dollars are weak in size but dominant in time. That is a brutal asymmetry. The dollar you invest in year one may double again, then double again if you stay in the game long enough. The dollar you invest much later arrives with less runway. It may still help, but it cannot carry the same historical burden. The first dollars are tiny soldiers with the longest campaign. That is why waiting is so expensive. You are not merely delaying contribution. You are reducing the number of multiplications each dollar can experience. People say, I will start serious investing when I make real money. What they are really saying is, I will wait until each dollar I invest has less time to become dangerous. That is not strategy. That is slow self-sabotage disguised as practicality. By year 5, Harry has climbed a little at work. Still ordinary, still not rich. His monthly contribution is roughly $112. His total deposits across the years are a little over $5,300. The account is somewhere just under $6,400 in this sketch. Now listen carefully. Only about 1,000 of that balance is growth. That still does not sound glamorous, but that 1,000 did not ask him for extra hours this week. It did not need him to take another call. It did not ask permission to show up tired. It simply existed because time and return began cooperating. That is the first whisper of the later explosion. The fuse is still not spectacular, but now it is undeniably alive. This is the point where weak people commit a new mistake. They say, 5 years for this. That is too slow. No, it is not too slow. It is exactly the speed of reality before reality gets dramatic. You are addicted to cinematic progress. Wealth does not care about your craving for spectacle. Wealth cares about continuity. If the process feels boring, that does not disqualify it, that often confirms it. The things that look thrilling at the beginning usually collect a bill later. The things that look dull at the beginning often remove a bill later. Salary feels immediate, ownership feels delayed, consumption feels rewarding, compounding feels mute, debt feels helpful, interest feels patient. This is the whole game learning which experiences lie early and which experiences pay late. Around year 8 or 9, something finally happens that most people only understand in hindsight. The curve bends, not because the laws of arithmetic changed, not because the market suddenly decided to be generous, not because Harry found a secret stock. The line bends because enough capital has piled up under enough time that the gains begin to matter in a way the human eye can no longer dismiss. Maybe total deposits are somewhere around 11,000 and change. Maybe the account shows 15 or 16,000. Now the gap is not dinner money. It is a used car. It is months of rent. It is meaningful enough to provoke a different emotional response. One morning he checks the account and realizes something stunning. In a decent month, the growth beat what he personally added. In a strong year, the market may put in more than he does. That is the handoff. This is the 4th stage of the fuse, and it is where most of the visible magic in wealthy lives is born. Early on, you carry the fire. Later, the fire starts carrying itself. That does not mean you stop contributing. It means the balance of labor changes. Your job shifts from dragging a silent process forward to defending a live process from your own stupidity. That is a very different assignment. In the early stage, effort matters most. In the later stage, protection matters most. You do not need to become more dramatic. You need to become harder to shake. At the beginning, the danger is quitting because nothing seems to happen. Later, the danger is interrupting a working engine because you feel rich or scared or clever or impatient. This is where lifestyle inflation becomes more dangerous than market volatility. When your income rises and your friends upgrade apartments, vacations, wardrobes, cars, and social rituals, you feel a pressure. That sounds reasonable. I work hard. I deserve to live a little. I am behind. I can always invest more next year. That whisper has destroyed a lot of 7-figure futures. Because the moment your lifestyle rises to meet every raise, you steal fuel from the years when the fuse is finally getting close to what matters. You have to understand the violence of that theft. A person who protects lifestyle pride over capital continuity is not merely spending more. He is weakening the later years where most of the visible gain was supposed to arrive. He is robbing his future with the applause of the present. I have never been impressed by that trade. You should not be either. People will tell you this is too harsh. They will say life should be enjoyed. I agree that life should be enjoyed. But enjoyment without control curdles into dependency. The market does not care how stylish your dependency looks. Harry handles this part better than most. He keeps his lifestyle a step behind his income. Not 10 steps, 1 step, enough to keep the fuse protected, enough to keep ownership growing faster than ego, enough to let the later multipliers have real capital to work on. This is a deeply unfashionable idea. That is why it works. Wealth is often what you refuse to display while it is still in development. The loud version is usually the weak version. The quiet version is usually the compounding version. By year 10 or 11, the picture changes so much that people who did not watch the boring beginning think something exceptional happened. In a strong year, the account may grow by several $1,000s. That is more than early Harry used to save across long stretches of life. Those tiny deposits from the beginning are still in there, carrying more than their original size would ever suggest, because they had the one resource nobody can manufacture later: time. Time is not just a variable in compounding. Time is the territory. It is the battlefield. It is the multiplier that turns a small act into a meaningful force. And here is the part people hate. The first decade can feel like an insult. The second decade can feel like vindication. The later years can feel almost unfair. Not because the world suddenly became just, because arithmetic finally became visible. This is why I tell you that most people do not fail at compounding because they picked the wrong fund. They fail because they never survive the invisible years. They need emotional proof too early. They keep interrupting the line before it bends. They keep calling silence failure. They confuse a dormant looking fuse with a dead one. If you are sitting there wondering whether your first $100 matters, whether $50 a month matters, whether $29 a month matters, let me answer that with the bluntness you need. The amount matters less than the permanence. Your first job is not to impress the spreadsheet. Your first job is to become the kind of person whose future keeps getting paid, even when present life feels tight. That is identity before arithmetic. Then comes structure before ambition. Automate the amount that does not trigger panic. Protect it. Raise it in odd, boring increments when income rises. Do not wait for neat round numbers. Real life is not neat. $5 more matters. $7 more matters. An extra tax refund deposit matters. Reinvested dividends matter. Staying invested when the news is hysterical matters. Keeping lifestyle one step behind income matters. All of it matters because the fuse is not one flash. It is one protected burn. There is another cruelty here you should understand. The person who begins late often tries to compensate with aggression. He takes more risk. He chases hotter names. He turns investing into entertainment because he is subconsciously trying to recover lost time with excitement. That is usually how people turn a delayed start into permanent damage. You do not beat late beginnings by becoming reckless. You beat them by becoming mechanically faithful. The market is already volatile enough. Your plan should not be. I also want you to see the psychological damage created by misunderstanding this process. If you believe success should feel good immediately, you will keep choosing activities with fast emotional return and terrible long-term economics. You will prefer buying over building. You will prefer flexing over funding. You will prefer the little applause of visible consumption over the deep security of invisible capital. Then later, when you are exhausted, you will tell yourself that wealth belongs to people with better luck, better connections, better timing, better genes, better something. Maybe sometimes it does. But for a vast number of ordinary people, the issue is not fate. It is that they never built enough distance between earning and spending for a fuse to survive. That is solvable, harsh, but solvable. So if I were talking to you directly across a table, I would not tell you to dream bigger first. I would tell you to harden your system first. Open the plain account, buy the plain productive asset, automate the plain contribution, protect the plain habit. Raise the contribution in boring little clicks when your income allows it. Treat the account as planted capital, not backup entertainment money. Keep your lifestyle behind your earning power. Stop demanding that the first year look like the final decade. That demand is juvenile and expensive. Remember the real milestones. The first is not some dramatic balance. The first milestone is when you stop negotiating with the contribution each month. The second is when you refuse to raid the account the first time life punches you. The third is when the gap between what you put in and what the account shows becomes impossible to dismiss. The fourth is when the growth from the money starts doing work larger than the money you add. By then, your younger self is finally helping your present self carry the load. That is when the whole game changes, not because you became special, because you stayed. If you want one sentence to remember this one. Compounding does not reward the smartest person first. It rewards the person who can protect a slow-burning fuse from panic, vanity, boredom, and lifestyle. Creep long enough for time to become visible. That is the real test. Not whether you understand the chart, whether you can survive the insult, because one day, if you hold the line, you will open that account and feel something that consumers almost never feel. You will feel your past discipline standing beside you. You will feel old choices still producing current strength. You will feel that a part of your life has stopped, depending entirely on your next paycheck. That is not just growth. That is dignity. And now comes the door you have to walk through or walk away from. You can keep living like every extra dollar exists to anesthetize the present, and you can keep restarting your future every time life gets loud, or you can light the fuse, protect it through the years that feel useless, and force time to become your employee. Most people will not do it. That is why the later rewards look so mysterious. They are not mysterious. They are delayed. The question is not whether compounding works. The question is whether you are finally willing to endure the long, quiet burn before it becomes impossible to ignore.